were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
That's so wizard, Annie. Welcome back, everybody. Tanner and I with two of our favorite quotes from the film, A Phantom Menace. We are here, another happy landing. We have officially started our watch through. If you have been following the show, go watch last week's. We had a trivia battle. It was a lot of fun. And now we're starting our rewatch. The trivia battle was 2 weeks ago. That's how tired I am. If you can tell by my hair, we just woke up. Last week we ranked all the Star Wars films. 2 weeks ago we had a trivia battle. Both were a lot of fun videos to make. So now we're going to start our rewatch and review all the films as well as the TV shows. Touch on news here and there, or maybe a book we're reading in these videos, but the bulk of this episode will be a review of A Phantom Menace, which I've never reviewed on the channel, so this will be fun. Before we get too far into it, thank you to Steve, Kimberly, and Karen, our Movie Meal patrons. You guys are amazing. Means a lot for the support. Go get some Movie Meals merch. I got the hoodie on because I slept in it, and it's just that comfortable, and I'm that lazy. But all linked in the description, so go get some of it. All right, so before we get too far into it, or start our Phantom Menace review, Tanner, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Got a big thumbs up. Looks like the man's pretty tired over there.
Yeah.
Up too late watching March Madness, going over the stats.
Yeah, going over the stats, watching the games, getting hype on them, maybe drinking a little too much beer. Whoops.
Hey, where are you going, Master? For a drink? May have already started Attack of the Clones, but all right, we are here. Let's talk real quick. We started the first Thrawn novel, Heir to the Empire, in the EU, the extended universe. Tanner suggested maybe starting the Thrawn trilogy. I think it sounds like we'll do both Thrawn trilogies back to back with maybe a break in there to do a book that amps up our viewing process, like we did with Padme. With the Queen's Shadow and Queen's Peril. But, so Tanner, what are your thoughts so far? I think we're both about the same spot. It looks like we're both about halfway through the novel so far. It is longer. Like, we got through Queen's Peril pretty quick, but that book's like 6 hours on the audio, and this is like a little over 13, so we're more than double.
I think this is actually hitting the 14 mark, but let me think. I think we're both at around the 8 or 9 hours left mark on the book, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think so
far? So far, dude, I'm having just as good of a time as I remember. Something that I don't remember hitting as well as it did reading through it again is the writer of Timothy Zahn does such a good job in nailing the classic like charisma and character of our favorite characters after the Return of the Jedi, and it like the bounce back and the chemistry that we get between Luke, Leia, and Han when they're actually like flying around on the Falcon again. Like they don't do it for terribly long, but it's just like, man, this is so fun. I'm having such a good time with this right now.
Remember when J.J. Abrams said we have to get the crew back together, we have to get the people back together, because in the original trilogy they're always together, and in the original trilogy they're not together very much. Right. Sorry, he made me think of that, and I will always find time to complain about Rise of Skywalker. But continue your thoughts.
But I mean, like that honestly also brings up one of my criticisms of the sequel trilogy in a whole. So I mean, level it against JJ as well. Honestly, it's a huge travesty that they didn't bring all of the legacy characters back together, at least for a couple of scenes. Then you can have them go off and have their death scenes. And if there's something that I really love about this book is we get that. I mean, we get the continuation. The Empire is not fully broken. They're still a major issue to the New Republic. And we get our really interesting character of Thrawn as he's running through and trying to find out what... one, he's really kind of like taking it upon himself to really do some like research throughout the galaxy and get a hold of the, what is it, the Islamari? So these little like lizard creatures that like crawl over everywhere. But They come from a planet where they are they block the Force. So like anyone walks in the like a Force user tries to use the Force around them, and they're like, "Ha, what?" Which is pretty cool. And I mean, like, it's a very fascinating planet of like having an ecosystem where they're Force nullifying, but the predators actually use the Force to hunt, and that's one of the reasons that the Islamari are actually able to stay alive is they track through the Force. Anyways, but it's just really fun. Sorry, man, I'm starting to geek out about this stuff.
Get sweaty. Get sweaty. This is a safe space, Tanner, to get sweaty.
But man, it is just having Thrawn there to also, like, as he runs through all of his processes as he as to what he's trying to do and so on. It's so good to see him pick apart an enemy, and instead of it being like, oh, he just magically did it, it really is well thought out in the process of what's happening. And like, I mean, there's a through line that's happening like right from the beginning of like, Pelion, I need you to go ahead and get me 50 mole miners, and Pelion's sitting over there going, what does he need 50 mole miners for? This makes no sense. and then later on in the book we get an awesome meeting with Lando. He's like, the 50 mole miners are missing. I have no idea why my 50 mole miners are missing. You're like, ooh, I wonder where that's gonna lead to. And just between Luke riding around in his X-wing, almost getting blown out of the sky by a Star Destroyer, really fun.
Yeah.
Leia's heading off to Kashyyyk, also very fun. Overall, it's just like, I want to get through the entire trilogy before I really cast out any major judgment, but I'll be straight with you. So far from what I've enjoyed of this book, I do think this as like a major like skeleton structure for or a roadmap for a next trilogy would have been better than the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I've never read this book. I know some of the characters, like seeing Mara Jade come back is really cool because she's popped up in some of the different novels I've read, and I've researched quite a bit about her, and I've really liked her character. You're right with the banter. It is great having all the legacy characters talk. Han is in this novel very like he's very Han, but he's very off in a way, and you can tell that it's getting on his nerves, and I kind of dig it. Luke going through his training. The book starts with some stuff about the Force and Yoda and Obi-Wan. Kind of, the book's been around forever. We can talk a little in depth about it. But
for sure.
Kind of, Luke's cut off from them on the Force. Low-key don't love that just because I'm such a sucker for that stuff. It's the same reason I can't stand parts of Legend of Korra, because she cuts herself off and it drives me nuts because it's a cool part. But I'm just getting off task here. I like the book. I do like the calculating Thrawn. I really like everything we've gotten. I love the Lando stuff. Mark Thompson, the narrator, is great. I really love the way he handles everybody. And I'm really enjoying it. I brought it up to you the other day. Who's the Dark Jedi?
Jedi Master Sabayoth.
Sabayoth. I don't know. I keep wanting to say the name funky. Sabayoth. So I've stuck to this ground. I'm not huge in the EU's 80 million different versions of a Jedi. I don't love it. And the idea of dark Jedis, I used to get in arguments with my old boss all the time. Shout out to Ryan. Because he is so obsessed with dark and gray Jedis, and gray Jedis I like. But all the other versions of there's like 8,000 different versions of Jedis in the EU, and I don't necessarily love it because it's trying to bring.
This is in a point in time though where they hadn't talked about Sith or someone being of the dark side. Like this came out in the 90s, and 93 is when this came out, and Phantom Menace didn't come out till 99, correct?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's a lot of that canon that's not really mishmashing. I mean, like, I don't know if you agree with me, or not on this, but I don't interpret when they're saying Dark Jedi. I don't interpret it as like an actual Jedi. He's really a dark side user, but they just didn't have a good name for it at that point in time.
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. It's just kind of a personal thing, just because I've been through so many arguments about different versions of Jedi, because there's always that nerd who's actually, and I will stand on this guy. There's always that nerd in Star Wars and Marvel, DC. There's always that nerd that thinks they're the top of the top with their knowledge, and they're actually not. They're actually like tier 2, and they've read so many EU books that they believe that they are deeper into the knowledge of everybody else. I have met so many people that have read a lot of EU stuff, and they actively hate all the new things. But this is where it gets crazy. They love the EU so much that they don't actually reference the original trilogy sometimes. And it drives me up a wall, because it's like, all right, I've fallen in love with these 9 novels. 3 of them are trash. The rest are good. And this is my Star Wars lore. And you have to love what you love. But, like, I've been in so many debates with those guys that I'm over it. And they don't understand what George's vision originally was. And it just drives me nuts. But anyway, I really do enjoy this book. And I am curious where they're going to go with this Sith Sabayoth and what his goal is. I loved his conversation with Luke, actually. I really, really liked that. And then his conversation right after with Thrawn, where Thrawn's like, you talked to Skywalker? And he's like, yeah, I did, guy. What are you going to do about it? Like, it's great. And the thing I like about this with Thrawn to start is he doesn't seem super on top of things. You can tell he's smart and calculating, but he's not necessarily. People are upping him, and he doesn't like it. So you start to see him evolve and change, as well as I do love the banter with his, like, number 2 guy. Because his number 2 guy, like, there's a conversation where he says something like, I mean, no disrespect, Master. I will do this. I am just curious of your motives. And Thrawn actually explains it to him, which is nice because it gives depth to a villain instead of the villain just being like, who cares what you think, go and get it.
Also, not to mention, I mean, like you're talking about, like going off of that. I mean, he really does. He has that moment of talking to Pelion, of like, I am not above. And I am not above subordinates' ideas. If it is a good idea, I will hear it out. And that's something that is just awesome with that character. Like, he is still willing to do that. I mean, we see Thrawn actually fail multiple times. As not only one, he's trying to wrangle in Sabayoth, but like he's kind of Sabayoth is a bit of a wild card right now that he's trying to like rein in. And he knows that he needs him because of the interesting. I was actually really curious what your thoughts are on this. That Thrawn is Thrawn has a hypothesis that once Emperor Palpatine died, that's when the fleet fell apart because he wasn't assuming like a battle meditation to really like help the fleet out and like keep them coordinated. Like once he died, the coordination just like fell and lost. And now what he's trying to do with Jedi Master Sabayoth is basically do the same thing, to just continually coordinate between ships and keep a fleet together. What are your thoughts on that? Do you like that? Do you not like that?
My thoughts are, I like it. That's about as far as my thoughts go. I think it's interesting and it's a cool dynamic. They do, I mean, this is Dreadnought. They have a Dreadnought drop, which I really like. It just reminds me when whether you like the movie or not, I liked it when actually JJ and Ryan actually did pull stuff from the EU.
You're talking about the Sovereign class the Sovereign, or are you talking about the? Okay.
They dropped the name in the book Dreadnought. That's a Dreadnought. We need to, and then that's in Last Jedi. Yeah,
I think particularly they're talking about the Executor at that point, the Executor class Star Destroyer.
Something like that. I just remember I heard the word.
Yeah.
And I got excited.
You're listening to the audiobook in around school. All of a sudden, just like closed off in your room. You're like, Dreadnought! They said Dreadnought!
I said Dreadnought! 6-year-olds are like, let's go! Anyway, let's wrap up the book talk and get to the meat of this episode here. Our review, and all spoilers, baby, of A Phantom Menace. And also, I just want to say this. There's no structure here. We're just going to let it flow on how we talk. Let the Force flow through us. The name might be one of the best titles in Star Wars. A Phantom Menace is such a cool name. And I remember, I was too young when, like, the trailers came out and whatnot to see it. I actually didn't see this one in the theater originally. I went back as they did a 3D re-release, I believe. It might have just been a re-release. But my brother and I went back. Shout out to Annie Essays. When it came here and we both were like, we have to go. It was like a 3 in the afternoon showing. We were like, we have to. We have to. We've never seen it on the big screen. We've seen Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. We have to. So we went and just enjoyed ourselves and had a good time. So I have seen it in the theaters, but like when you talk to older fans who grew up with the original trilogy and you hear like when that first trailer came out, you get some really cool stories because those guys and gals talk about when that trailer came out and the title hit and it just says, you know, in the old 90s voiceover, A Phantom Menace, right? Like the Jedi have a new villain. The Phantom Menace. Like, they lost their minds. It's a cool title. Did the movie hit the mark? No. Did it trick everybody? Yes, because when that movie came out, everybody was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then there were like 4 or 5 people who were like, you guys are so wrong. And then that movie got 2 years deep, and everybody was like, wait a minute. This movie sucks.
This is not very good.
To the point where they bullied a young Jake Lloyd who's doing what George asked him to do. All those kids who grew up, who were bullying him, all the adults, you all are awful people, and I hope you have gone through the motions of forgiveness towards him.
He was a child.
That's
like,
ridiculous.
Why?
He was like 12. It's disgusting. I thought about that as the movie went on because I was like, you can tell this is George's direction, and this kid is having the best time of his life. He's playing pretend on a studio set, having the best day of his life, and he got bullied to the point where he's been in and out of jail. Like that Star Wars is wildly known for ruining his life, and it's awful because that is not what Star Wars is about. Anyway, the movie. Tanner, why don't you just take over from there? Some thoughts.
Overall thoughts. No joke. This movie, maybe this is just because of all the extra like subsidiary content that we've done to like amp up the movie. Really just thinking about Star Wars as a whole, and I actually walked away from this movie having a much higher like love for it than I thought I would. Dude, I've had like a roller coaster.
How long's it been since you watched it last?
Oh, Sorry. It's probably been about 2 years. No, wow. No. That's a lie. When I did a watch through of the prequels when Last Jedi came out, so that way I could like really fill in Olivia on the story, like on the pre bits of the not the Last Jedi. What am I? Fallen Order.
Fallen Order.
Fallen Order, yeah. I was me and Olivia were doing a little bit of a recap, so that way when we went into Fallen Order, we were like, oh, this is the moment, and this makes sense.
So Fallen Order came out a year and a half ago. So it's been about a year and a half?
Been about a year and a half, correct.
All right.
And I was I've been on a roller coaster because when I saw this movie in the theater, I mean, I was little. I must have been about like 7.
Yeah, you're a year older than me, and I think I was just too young to go see it back in the day.
Yeah. My family knew how obsessed I was with Star Wars at a very young age, so they were like, yeah, we'll take him in. Honestly, I'll be straight. I don't remember much of it. I remember more of watching the VHSs of it. Way more. Back when they still made VHS.
Yeah, I mean, the VHS, I told it on the first episode, is what got me into Star Wars. That's what my exposure was a Phantom Menace on VHS at a daycare, watching them all fight. And I remember being like, what on earth is this? And I was holding the little golden retriever puppy, and I was like, let's get it. Dad, what is this? And he's like, that's Star Wars, kiddo.
And I'm amazed as to how much higher of an opinion, because like I remember watching this movie and I was so high up on it. I get a little bit older. I feel like my tastes in movies and just criticisms start to get a little bit more refined, and my opinion just starts to just slowly drop, and then it just plummets straight down. I think at like some point in time, I like rewatched it in like high school. I was like, oh my god, no, this movie's terrible. And then I started to like I started to watch it again a little bit more, and it's like I started to get a little bit more, but no joke, like I'm on a pretty big uptick in opinion on this one afterwards. I'm shocked by it, man. I don't know, it's just seeing a young Ewan McGregor along with Liam Neeson running around as Qui-Gon. And maybe I'm just having a grand old time also, like, every single scene, the scenes with the Trade Federation are so useless, but I just still love it. It's like, but, my lord, is that legal? I will make it legal.
You must contact me. It's just one of my favorites.
You must contact me. The people are dying.
One of my best buds when we did a rewatch a few years ago, because every time like Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker came out, we did rewatches.
Yeah.
He noticed, he was like, have you noticed how that Anakin, or not Anakin, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan use Force speed when they, like, very early on in the movie? And I had never noticed it before. And they showed it to me like a year ago, and now it sticks out like a sore thumb that they're, because Obi-Wan's or Qui-Gon says like, we gotta get out of here, and then it goes to a wide shot. They just, they're out of there. They are gone. And then when the droids turn the corner, I don't really realize they're down this hallway already. Those boys be moving.
Always.
Like, and it's awesome that George back in the day, he went over to a computer, and when they normally ran off set, he's like, you need to speed that up. Like, George just walked up to the editor and he's like, speed it up. They're using Force speed right there. I think it was.
It's the first and only time that we ever see it used.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'd rather have that than Force healing. Although I kind of like the Force healing. I just didn't like how it was utilized. Anyway.
Force healing's good. It's not good in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I agree. I love A Phantom Menace. It'll always be lower on my ranking because of just the way the film is designed. But it is so fun to just sit down and watch. Like, especially like if you get a bunch of friends and you just have a good time, you're talking through it, you're laughing, you're making jokes, you're saying the quotes. It's awesome. I mean, and this one legit might be the most quotable of all the movies, I feel like, or at least they were trying to make it the most quotable. The fact that, like, that's so wizard, Annie, or Anakin running around going yippee all the time, it's just ridiculous. And is it absurd that Darth Vader built C-3PO? Yes, George,
yes.
It is. It makes no logical sense that Darth Vader, because later when it's like, Leia goes, I gave the plans to an R2 unit and a C3 droid or whatever, and Darth Vader's like, oh, them my boys. Like, it's just ridiculous how much of the connectedness that the prequels have. But honestly, I'll take Darth Vader building C3PO over Rey being a Palpatine any day of the week. I'll take it any day of the week. It's just
also,
ridiculous.
Can we talk about one of the most
back.
seminal characters? Oh, it's me, Watto. What do you think? You're some kind of a Jedi waving your hand around like that?
Love Watto. I love Watto. We also get Jar Jar. Oh my gosh. Jar Jar, also one of the most hated characters. You know what I love, though, is that now Ahmad Best is hosting that show on Disney Plus, like becoming like a Jedi or whatever the show is for kids. That's awesome. There are quotes by Liam Neeson saying that Ahmad Best on the set of that movie had him laughing so hard because he's such a funny comedian that he thought this guy, after these movies come out, this is a real quote, Liam Neeson said, after these movies come out, when he blows up, he's going to be as big as Eddie Murphy. He's that funny. And because this movie was so bad, he lost gigs. He lost opportunities. And it's just a bummer because the play is for actors. The stage is for actors. Television is for writing. Movies are for directors. That's just kind of the way it's been in Hollywood. Yes, you can get a thing like Game of Thrones where you get great directors and great things, or performances you'll get all across the board. But George is to blame for these movies not being good. Everybody was yes-manning him. He couldn't get another friend to direct it. He directed all three. He was way too into the tech. And in this movie, I think the CGI, and I told this to Tanner, I popped in Attack of the Clones yesterday right as I finished this because I had nothing else to do. So I was like, hey, I might as well watch Attack of the Clones, put on some of the basketball games, work on some Legos, have a good time. You know, what you do when you're 26. And the CGI in Attack of the Clones versus The Phantom Menace is light years ahead of the game. Like, it is so much better. And it's crazy to me because the CGI at times, I think, in Phantom Menace is actually really good and holds up. But I think that's like maybe 25% of the time. The rest, it does not hold up. You can really tell it's a green screen.
Right.
But we also have to remember, when that movie came out, it was the most technological, advanced movie ever. You hear critics now who worked... like I remember John Campea saying this for a long time when he was on AMC Movie Talk, where he said, I worked in visual effects when this movie came out. And he said he saw it like 19 times in the theater. And he knew lots of people in the visual effects community that went and watched it literally 15 plus times in the movie theater because they had never seen a movie that technologically advanced ever. And it also has the most miniatures. So George took a lot of time with the CGI, the craft, and the experience behind everything, and there is an appreciation there. It doesn't hold up because tech has gotten so good, and you can see the difference in Attack of the Clones, which comes out 3 years later, that the difference is just it's night and day, I think. I mean, even Watto stands out very poorly in A Phantom Menace, but in Attack of the Clones, he actually fits a lot better. I've gone on for a while, though, Tanner. What are your thoughts on the movie? Anything I've said? Just change the subject. What do you got?
Oh, man, I'm having shooting off from what you were talking about with the technical. Sorry, my brain's bouncing all over the place right now.
Love a good bounce.
When I don't know why, it's just like the pod race especially sticks out for me personally.
It's awesome.
One, as an amazing scene, and someone once told me that it's like the most useless, stupid thing that exists in this movie. And that it's just not needed there. No, it's nobody you know. It's
good, because they wouldn't be allowed in my friend circle.
Dude, it's so much fun. It's also not to mention, I mean, like the way again, I honestly thought that it wasn't that bad of an idea. Although I do think it's a little careless of a Jedi to be like, oh yeah, just put this child in there and let him go to town on these.
It really is. He barks back once and he's like, I don't know. And the mom's like, no, he's gonna do it. And it's like, what? This guy's 12. Why are we putting him into it? Oh, Qui-Gon literally just said, oh, they've got pod racing on Malostar and it's very fast, very dangerous. Why are you letting this kid go? I get it. He's got fast reflexes. He's a Jedi. He's born of the midi-chlorians. Blah, 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 blah. But it's ridiculous. I didn't mean to hijack you, Tanner. Continue.
Oh no, you're all good. But like, I was just looking. The entire section of that, I personally think, is a marvel of a blend between the CGI and practical, because you can see that every single one of those pod racers has been designed by hand, and then on top of that, they're comped in perfectly. I mean, granted, the nice thing is when you're shooting a race. And you're, because as I understand what they did for the racing scenes of that they actually practically took a camera through some of these spaces and then sped up the film to really kind of give it that, like, you're moving at incredibly fast speeds. But there are sections of CGI in it that just really work. And from a filmmaking perspective, though, it's like you do those little tricks to really make it appear like it's real. The nice thing is when you're moving at such fast speeds that you don't get like the flatness of CGI of the time that exists on those. For instance, where I don't think that it holds up at all was the introduction of Jar Jar. Holy crap.
Oh, yeah, it's bad. Honestly, the whole Gungan, everything with the Gungans in the beginning, I think is not very good.
Yes, it's...
But Jar Jar sticks out like a sore thumb pretty bad.
Well, weirdly enough, I do actually think that once we get into the underwater Gungan city, that because it's all CGI and the way that Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson are comped into the scene, that it feels relatively natural, because everything in there is CG.
Yeah, it's easier to take two living people and put CGI all around them than it is to take CGI around one thing, around everything that's natural. Mocap.
Right.
Especially at that time.
Exactly. And whereas I especially noticed it, CG in the early days with organics is really hard to do. There was a scene that stuck out to me that I was like, oh god, that looks so bad. When it was the introduction happened and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are back and forthing are like right next to, and Jar Jar's right in the middle as they're telling them, and it's like, do you hear that? That is 1,000 terrible things that are heading this way. And
yeah,
he just looks so out of place between the two of them.
He does.
But again, that's the most negative of it. But the most positive that I have to show of it, though, are, I mean, a lot of people criticize like the starships for like looking too shiny, looking too good. But he blends the entire pod racing scene. To me, is a marvel of how good it holds up. The mix between CG and practical is just perfect. It's perfect. Oh, fun fact about the pod racing scene. I didn't actually know this. There's actually a cut scene of the Jawas. They're posted up on the ridge, like taking shots at the pod racers. Apparently, there was a cut scene of them like dumping rounds at Jawas down the way. I was like, what? That's funny. Why would you have that in there?
The sand people.
Yeah, the sand people. Tusken Raiders just taking shots at a couple of Jawas downrange. Awesome. Oh my god.
I mean, hey, we don't get Avengers Endgame and the Planet of the Apes trilogy, the
right.
Jungle Book, which is now widely considered the most technologically advanced movie ever. Avatar, when that came out and took over the mantle, we don't get those without ILM and without George Lucas. He created all of that. And when you go watch the Mandalorian Round Table for the first season and you get the episode with the visual effects guys, there's some of them that are like, yeah, no, I worked on a Phantom Menace and then I broke off. I left ILM and then I went to a different studio and now I'm kind of back. Like all these guys, all these apprentices George had all broke off to new companies, and ILM is everywhere. It's everywhere. Some of those guys worked on Mad Max, which people always praise Mad Max for its practical effects, but it actually has an absurd amount of CGI and visual effects. Like we don't get movies like that without George Lucas. Like he's the godfather of all of it. He really is. And if you watch the Steven Spielberg documentary on HBO, which for some reason I really want to watch because they touch on George and Star Wars for like 10 minutes, and that alone makes me want to rewatch the whole thing, even though I love Steven. But Steven talks about, hey, like we don't get any of that without George. And the reason I never made a movie, even though he kept asking me, is because it's such his baby. And anyway, so A Phantom Menace, the movie's a lot of fun. I agree with you with the pod racing scene. I like that the Nubian stuff looks the way it does, actually.
Shiny.
I think
I like it.
I like it. I think the designs of the ships, too, end up being really sleek and kind of cool. And it makes sense. And after reading the novels, it makes more sense because they get deep into what it's like to be on Naboo. Also, I told this to Tanner, but it was like every time Padme and the handmaidens were on scene, like I had never really paid attention to the handmaidens behind her, and they don't do anything but stare and look like her. But holy cow, do I notice them? Like there were times I was like, show me the handmaidens. Like I was like, I want to see them again. Just because I loved the book so much and the storylines they gave. And when the handmaidens actually do talk, like I was paying way more attention than I normally do to, is that actually Padme right now? Because it is hard to tell. These girls look like her. It's hard to tell.
Dude,
and so
Keira Knightley in the makeup looks so much like Natalie Portman. It blows my mind. They did such a good job with that. Also, like, shout out to Keira Knightley. I'd like, after...
To all the actresses who played her.
It's like, holy crap, I didn't actually realize, well, I mean, it actually wasn't until that long ago that I realized that Keira Knightley played Sabe. And it's like, holy crap, I didn't even realize that after all these times, she knocked it out of the park. Oh my god, it's so good.
I think it's her first technical major movie role is being in Star Wars.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But like I go read those books because it enhanced my viewing of this of a Phantom Menace, and I was like, I want more handmaidens. Give me a Disney Plus show now. Like that's what I was wanting. Yeah, one of the critiques that was brought to a Phantom Menace a lot when he was initially released by Star Wars fans was the annoyance of politics and discussion of trade disputes. Did you like it or did you not? No, you tune into, 20 years later, and then the biggest thing ever is Game of Thrones. And everyone's like, I love the politics, I love the conversation.
I know.
And you're just like, I tried to do that and y'all yelled at me. my impressions of people are off the board. That makes no sense. They're
on point.
They're all whack.
No. They're all point. Don't let anyone tell you wrong.
I like the politics. I do,
Yeah.
and I liked it in Game of Thrones. I like seeing the nitty gritty of things. So when they're actually in the Senate yelling, like I like it. And I hope this isn't an Attack of the Clones because now I'm forgetting where the scene is. But there's times where like people interrupt. And they fly in, and it feels like a Senate meeting we really have today, and nothing really gets done. And I like that part where they discuss it, and and it makes sense. Palpatine is going to take over and build an empire. He causes a war by pinning both sides that he's on against each other, and then taking over from there. And you need the political side. You need to see the struggle, and you get that in the novels, and it again amped up my experience of this because I was enjoying everything with Padme on screen, all of the Queen stuff, all of the Senate stuff. I really like it. What are your thoughts?
No, I completely I agree with that. Initially I completely agree. Like when I first went and watched it, I was like, what is this politics stuff? But as I got older, and I honestly, the greater context of the books and the greater context of the Star Wars universe as a whole, especially the Clone Wars, we deal a lot with the Senate and different committees and what's happening inside of them, the art of getting a deal going. And I think it really works. During the time when it was released and there was no other content around it, I completely agree. You went from going from like a really fun space adventure of flying in the Millennium Falcon as you're going through asteroids while the Empire's on your tail. That all of a sudden you come back to this and you're like, yes, the Trade Federation is having a dispute with Naboo and we need to send it to committee. I don't know. We'll figure something out one of these days. That happens, and I can completely understand around that time with people being like, what is this? But just with the greater context of all of it, I think it works. I do. It's weird, but I do. Gosh. Fight scene. Lightsaber duel.
You want to talk about that? You want to talk about the good stuff?
Oh, there's a lot of good stuff that I want to talk
about. Before we get to let's get to the icing on this cake. But I do want to point out when we first see Darth Maul fight Qui-Gon, there's a shot where Qui-Gon jumps up on the ship. What?
Yeah, I was I don't know if you were gonna bring it up, but like the first time that we see Maul show up is like Qui-Gon and Annie's like running behind him, and then he turns around and yells at Annie, "Get down!" And he's flying on his speeder, and he's totally about to just nuke Annie. Like he doesn't even care. He's
I love it. Because we get the tease with him, you know, with the "at last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi at last" or whatever it is. And he looks menacing, and you're like, "This is the Phantom Menace. This is insane." And then when they have that first fight, there's actually a shot in there I really like by George because Maul doesn't ignite the second blade, and there's a shot where the ship is flying off, the dust is everywhere, and it is looking up. The camera's below Maul's back and looking at him, and you can see, and you know in the theater, people were like, why is that lightsaber so long? The handle is just huge. And you know it was foreshadowing in a tease, and I just really like that shot. I've always just kind of sat back and gone, that is good by George, because there is a lot of good in these movies, and we tend to get on George, but that is like something like that I really like, because then when we get to the moment where he flips the blade and it goes 1 and then 2, you lose your absolute mind. Because that's the first time in Star Wars we have ever seen that. We've never seen a different style lightsaber than that, than just the classic ones. Green, blue, red, normal hilts, they look like those, and we've just never seen it. And it's a really cool moment.
I gotta say,
score comes in.
Oh!
You just hear it subtly. It's like dun 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 dun, and you're
dude,
like,
let's talk about the score. Let's talk about the score as a whole, though. Like, there are so many, like, re-listening to and just, like, watching the whole movie. Good. The whole score is awesome. And, like, I remember, like, most of the movie's scores and moments that happen throughout really stick out in my mind. But, I mean, obviously, yes. Duel of the Fates is obviously the number one. Like,
it legitimately is in the top maybe 3 of the scores.
Right.
Like, it competes with the best, with the Empire, the Empire theme, the
Empire Strikes Back is number 1 for me.
Well, I'm just talking individual scores, like individual things. So, like the Empire,
that's
Imperial
what
March,
the Empire, the Imperial March. That's the one that I was meaning to say. Yeah.
But it competes with it. Like you put it in, into a bracket, which I think I've just decided we should do a score bracket. At some point where we'll get like the top 16 where they're used and utilized the best, and then we'll battle it through. That would actually be a good idea.
What if we so we could do a bracket between the two of us and see where it goes. But I'm also really curious if we throw it out to people and maybe throw it out on Twitter as well, and then
I like where your head's at,
where people vote down like where is it, what are going to be the final ones. I'm really
I like where your head's at. We'll talk about this later when we play games, because we're playing games later today.
Where are we dropping, boy?
When we drop it, boy.
Oh,
real quick, this is the tangents I love. Real quick though, have you watched Falcon Winter Soldier's first step yet?
Yes.
Have you?
Right at the beginning.
Yes, have you seen all the memes where it's like the second that plane comes over, the boys all immediately were like, we dropping right now? Like everybody was, we dropping? I thought the same thing. It was 6:30 a.m. I know this is a Star Wars show, but if you've seen that first episode when I was watched at 6:30 in the morning, when that plane came over, I was sitting like this and I went, are we dropping right now? I looked around, I was like, where am I? Like, are we getting out
Dude,
of the here? What's going on?
It's literally the same shot of the cargo plane from
I think
Warzone.
They did it on purpose.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anyway, back to Star Wars.
Back to Star Wars.
Honestly though, when it hits, because those violins, they hit, because it's as soon as
the vocals, the vocals.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying when they first we'll handle this, and they all are like, we'll find another way around, and they go around, and you just hear it faintly, and just dun 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 dun, and then when they come in with the opera, and it's just I literally can't talk about it. I'm having such a good time.
I'm getting goosebumps, man. It's so good. It's so good.
I love that fight. Because it develops Obi-Wan so much. We see Yes, it is maybe a little too choreographed. It's just kind of a thing with the whole prequels, but holy cow. I actually think if you were to do this versus the Mustafar fight, I think this is actually less choreographed. I think they tried to make this feel a little more gritty than that one. I think the Mustafar fight is by far the most choreographed.
Yes.
But I love it. I love it. I also seen this, and I'm curious your thoughts. I've seen this trend go around where people have started to say that the reason Obi-Wan says to Anakin, hey, don't try it in Mustafar. Don't try and get over me, is not because he has the high ground and that's just, you have the advantage, It's actually because he had the low ground on Maul and he knows exactly how to defeat it. He knows what to do. He knew what to do. He saw what Maul didn't, and he knows how to beat that. And then Anakin tries it because Anakin is cocky and specifically wants his power to be superior. And Obi-Wan gets him. And I kind of like that. I'd never heard that before, and I kind of dug that thought process for Obi-Wan and that character development. I'm just curious your thoughts, and then you can go on about the fight.
I completely agree. It's you know that after that fight, I mean, this might go on a little bit of a side tangent, but there's one of the last scenes in The Queen's Peril was Padme, the hands, along with Anakin and Obi-Wan, watched as the last embers burn of Qui-Gon sitting there. And this dramatically, the death of Qui-Gon dramatically affects both Obi-Wan and Anakin. Anakin hasn't seen him for long, but he's basically the father figure that he's never had. And he's got all of these like wonderful things in his head of like, oh, I'm going to become a Jedi and train under Qui-Gon. Oh my God. And
he spent the last few days with Qui-Gon. Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't even meet Obi-Wan until later. Which is a nice little heartwarming scene. You can see the joy on Jake Lloyd where he's like, Anakin, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Really gets it. It's just God, I love the campiness. I love it.
And
but
where
the funeral
was I
you were
going
talking
with this?
about?
Yes, the funeral. It's let me think. It's something that affects both of those characters for so long that the two of them probably had like a lot of heart-to-hearts and like talks as Obi-Wan was trying to teach him like, this is how you defend against this. And I like 100% there is nothing that can beat this. I want to make sure that we are both perfect at this. And that's where I think that conversation comes from, is deeply traumatic event. They both constantly prepare for it. And so once we get the line of like, don't try it, Anakin, Obi-Wan and Anakin have been fighting with each other and know each other's style so much by this point in time that he gains the massive advantage that he's like, you're going to lose if you do this. Do not do this. I don't want to kill you. And he does it anyways because he's, one, cocky and is just consumed with the dark side at this point in time.
And they have been pretty much inseparable up until that point, except for the Darth Maul fight, where Obi-Wan is not with Anakin during that. They're not together. Anakin is off, apparently staying in a cockpit, saving the day as a little 12-year-old, which is a bit ridiculous. But I get what George was going for with this movie. He was going for setting up a trilogy, but he wanted to make Anakin likable. He wanted children to grow up with Anakin and to relate to him. And he wanted kids of that age, because he has maintained this forever, even with the original trilogy. These are movies for kids. That is what he has always stood his ground on. He ended up making movies that hit everybody with the originals. And I do think, it was a mistake for George to write and direct all three on his own. Because you can see such development in the original trilogy when you get talented directors to take over. With George just kind of being there as a producer. But I get what he was going for, and he has great moments in this movie. The pod racing scene, I think, is awesome. It's also, as a kid, hardest thing on Lego Star Wars to beat. That pod racing scene is tough. And the Duel of the Fates fight, I don't really love the space battle. it's okay because it is a little campy because we are following a 12-year-old Anakin Skywalker flying a Nubian ship. Like, people got on Rey for being able to just learn how to fly. Like, they called her a Mary Sue because Rey just knew how to fly. At least Rey was like 18 years old, had been around mechanics and been around ships and kind of got the game. Anakin is 12 years old and he is an expert pod racer, and then he can just jump into a Nubian and just win the day. Like, he has a little bit of trouble where he's like, R2, get me off autopilot. And then the second he's off autopilot, Anakin, he knows where everything is. He knows where every button is. And, like, people are ridiculous in this community where they'll attack Rey for that, but then they'll, we grew up with the prequels, so it's okay. But I got
we also
what George
get the
is
first
going
scene.
for.
We get the first scene of Rey hopping into the Falcon, though, too, and she, like, straight up trashes it. Like, on a couple... She like, goes up, and then goes down, and then, like, tries to go up, turns it sideways, and then...
Yeah,
but then after that, she flies it, like, perfectly. And I guess the one thing that I will say to that, it's like, Anakin, one, he's incredibly strong in the Force at this point in time, which, I would also... Rey is incredibly strong in the Force as well. But I agree with you that the criticisms, if you're going to level the criticisms against Rey, you need to level the criticisms against Anakin. Now, the one thing I will say, when it comes to Anakin and what he goes through and suffers, I do think that he does... he gets put in his place a couple times, not only in Episode 2, but also Episode 3. But he is a pod racer and has been racing pods for a little while, for quite some time now, and is just good at it. It doesn't seem like it would be too much of a stretch to me for him to hop into a starfighter, like hop into a cockpit and be like, okay, this feels kind of similar, so screw it, let's go ahead and try this out.
Sure, yeah. No, I get it for the character side.
Right.
I do want to pose this to you because I just thought of it. So two things. First, we'll talk about the biggest thing that made people groan when this movie came out, and that is honestly, I think it's bigger than anything, is the midichlorians. I think that people care about that more than anything. As a kid, I never hated the midichlorians because this was my introduction, so that's what I was told. And like, when we were kids, we used to create powers. Like, one of the things we would do when we were kids, because, man, we used to play Star Wars like it was nobody's business. But one of the things an attack we all came up with was called the midichlorian ball, and we would, like, create like a Naruto-style Rasengan in our heads of, like, midichlorians, and we would shoot it at people. Like, that was our version of, like, the lightning that the Siths had.
Yeah.
And, like, I never hated it. So like, when they drop M count in Mandalorian, I don't hate that. I like that. Although I think a lot of people end up liking that, which is, again, a bit unfair that we just obliterated George, and then once it's retro, it's cool. I think it's just unfair. I still, to this day, don't mind the midichlorians. I do groan at them a little bit, but it's okay that they're in there. They're not really referenced. I like the M count kind of tease. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, these guys this is the height of the Jedi. This is the High Republic. Like, this is the end of the High Republic. And I'm just sitting there going, they're very wise. They're very technologically advanced. For them not to come up with a scientific name for, like, the Jedi are rooted in science more than people believe. Like, for them not to come up with a name to just help them describe what this is, just doesn't make sense to me. I get it takes away some of the magic, but when you look at where the Jedi are at, why wouldn't they have a name for it? Like, why wouldn't they be like, man, this guy is very strong? Like, the difference is they're going from Rey is very strong in the Force, Anakin's very strong in the Force, to they have a high midichlorian count. It's just another way of saying they're strong with the Force. And the more I have thought about it in time, the more I am okay with it. And I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, when I was a little bit more down on it, I was kind of like, why do we need midichlorians? I mean, honestly, at this point in time, I'm very neutral to it, to be entirely honest. I guess
that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't hate on it, but I'm not crazy about it. Maybe that's just because, like, I've always enjoyed when the Force is a little bit more mystical.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I love like the
like
Bendu so much.
Yes.
And what they bring. And the wills.
Also, not to mention, like, Yoda's like 3-episode arc in the Clone Wars during, like, season 7? Season 6?
Yes.
Season 7. That is one of my favorite Clone Wars arcs, as he's trying to go through and understand what these, I mean, is it the wills of the Force? I'm thinking.
Yes, the wills.
Yes.
The wills, yes. He's kind of following them. Just trying to learn
as
about
he's
them.
going through, learning about them, learning what the Force is, learning what balance is, being able to reconnect with his, reconnect with Qui-Gon as he's made his way through the living Force. And
which we forget, Qui-Gon teaches Yoda how to change. Like, Qui-Gon's not good enough to do it, but he was good enough to talk. And he's the one who teaches Yoda how to do it, who Yoda teaches Obi-Wan. Or actually, Qui-Gon teaches Obi-Wan, but...
Right.
Sorry, continue.
Great. I've always loved those moments of it's weird, you know, because one of the biggest things that I love, and I know I've talked to you about this multiple times, is I like universes that have established rules. I tend to like that a little bit more.
Hunter, you need to watch that anime. I'm gonna keep. Every time you bring that up, I'm gonna bark that because that is right up that alley.
But two of the shows that exemplify this to a T are Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and Avatar: The Last Airbender. They establish the rules and they never break them. They bend them a lot, but they never break them, and it creates a very interesting. Whereas like a lot of it's a little bit of the Dragon Ball Z effect of like, oh, I'm going to invent this new move and this new Super Saiyan level, and it's like, are we just going to keep going and going and going?
Yeah, to the point where I can't watch Dragon Ball Super. Like, I like Super, but man, it's just... I agree with you. The Dragon Ball Z effect annoys me, where somebody gets cool power, everybody gets cool power, so we just kind of make the next power the same power, but a little bit better. Like, it's not fun. There's no established rules.
There's no established rules, and you feel like there's no stakes when it comes to it, because you know that the next big baddie is going to come, be a little bit more powerful. They're going to get a new move to fight the big baddie, and it's going to be good. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think that there are some cool moments in Dragon Ball Z.
It's great anime. I love it.
But
just can't watch
those particular, I just feel like that universe could be a much more helped if you had that. For instance, Avatar: The Last Airbender has a lot of the like earthbending is one of the biggest ones that leads into metal bending. You're like, oh my god, no, that absolutely makes sense. There's particles. Metal comes from the earth. It is, for intensive purposes, a refined rock. And that makes absolute sense that you'd be able to bend that.
Or blood bending, where your body is made of water and you can actually control people. Like, that is bending, but not breaking the rules. It's just adapting in smarts. And it's something Star Wars struggles with in the prequels.
Yes, absolutely. Which is weird, because I love the Force, and I love what the Force does, and I love that it's mysterious, but there are no hardline rules with that. And I prefer that.
Yeah, I kind of get that too. Like, it can be anything. That's where you can get unique powers.
I don't want it to be like so over the top, though, that a single Jedi could just with the Force alone be able to wipe out entire armies or starfleets. That I'm not crazy about.
You know, the moment Darth Vader can choke out 20,000 soldiers at once is a bit much. You know, because there are limits that people can do, right? I always love George's analogy that people tend to forget about, but he's preached this since the 70s. The Force is like yoga. Anybody can work on yoga. Some people are a bit more flexible, though, and they're going to be better at it. Like, anybody can learn something. That's how he always talks about it, because when people bring up Finn so much, that Finn should have been the super powerful Jedi, I agree that Finn maybe could have had more with the Force and they could have utilized him better. But for him and Rey to go on the same path doesn't always make sense, because it doesn't seem like Finn was set up to have much more than just basic knowledge of the Force, which some people have. And that's just coming from a casual fan. But I want to bring this other thing up real quick because we got to wrap this show up here shortly.
I got another question for you as well.
Okay, I'll get through this one. You remember yours.
Yeah.
And this is a little off topic, little not. So in this movie, you get who is the boy's father? There was no father. I carried him and whatnot. And you can interpret that line differently, that, that she may have, been assaulted, and that is why she says that. And I think for a long time, that is actually the narrative people went with. That is actually not true. If you read the Vader canon comics, Palpatine is actually confirmed to have gone to Shmi because she had a connection with the Force that was untapped. She had things like that, and he manipulated the midichlorians, creating life, which he obviously explains to Anakin in Episode 3 with the Darth Plagueis the Wise speech about how you can manipulate the midichlorians to create life, and that Palpatine is actually saying that to Anakin, that he basically created him, and he did. He's supposedly like Jesus, in this, and that makes sense. It makes sense that that's the way George took this when he originally wrote this, because he plays a lot off of religion and different religions. Does it work? Maybe, maybe not. Do people like it? Maybe, maybe not. I'm kind of neutral on it. But here's where my question comes into be. And I think I have never thought this before. I've never heard anybody talk about this, so this might be a first time ever.
Yep. So
the Force likes to balance itself, right? Force likes to balance itself out without needing people. Like it'll naturally, it's fate. It's the wills. When somebody needs to come along to fix all the darkness, eventually a hero comes along, and vice versa. The villain will come back. Things like that. Because Qui-Gon says this, who is the father? Because these two somebody's got to have a strong connection with the Force, because it's genetic in a way. Because yes, we don't produce, but we don't reproduce. You're not supposed to as a Jedi. And part of that is because, like, if Yoda's out there having babies, you're going to get a lot of Grogus running around who are very strong in the Force. Because he's that powerful, and they don't believe in that kind of stuff.
Yaddle and Yoda getting it on.
Here's my question. Padme has twins, and Anakin's not supposed. Anakin is the most powerful Jedi, highest midichlorian count ever, higher than anybody we've ever seen. He's stronger than everybody in the Star Wars universe ever. He is the most powerful Jedi, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. He has babies. What if the Force is the reason that Padme had twins? Because when you pass on your powers, kind of All Might style here, you get the next person to carry it is even stronger. And what if the Force is the reason she has twins, because Anakin's power moved on to the next user, could not be contained within one child. That child would be way too strong. I've never thought that before. I love it. I'm running with it. I'm all about it. Because obviously Luke is extremely powerful off of half of the power. Yeah. And Leia is extremely powerful, yet untrained. Again, back to the book, I do love the talk about getting Leia trained, where Han is like, we can't do this anymore. We need to get trained. I love that. But Leia is also, and canon now, because of Rise of Skywalker, a very powerful Jedi herself.
Yeah.
But that's half. What if they had one kid? You're pondering things over there. You've never heard this theory, the Al theory, the Alberto theory.
I've never heard this theory. This is
I'd love this. I'd love it in my own head. I am digging myself right now.
That's pretty. I'm gonna have to ponder that one a little bit more, because I like that. It does, and I mean, Leia also having twins in the books.
I know, and I do like that. It's, and maybe that maybe you're playing off Al's theory a little bit there, guy. Maybe that baby be a little too tough.
Man, that's interesting. I really am gonna have to ponder that one, because I like that idea. It also really plays into the Skywalker saga as a whole.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I dig that.
That Luke and Leia are the balance. Right? Yoda says it. We don't need to rely on just Luke. There is another. That the Force balanced itself within them. That we have this. These two can beat beat him, but it only took Luke. It took Leia too, because Leia saves the day down on the ground. But
which also leads to an interesting conversation of, do you think that to achieve true, the Jedi for some reason are always, they seem to be seeking this idea that in order to achieve true balance in the Force, that we need to just wipe out the Sith. But do you think that to achieve true balance in the Force, that it's basically going to be an internal struggle between good and evil?
I have always thought that. That's, again, why I actually like the way Luke goes in Last Jedi, because I like him saying, look, I have watched for years. I've made mistakes. I've watched the Jedi make mistakes in my training. I just see nothing but if we get rid of the Jedi, then there will be balance, because the Sith will disappear. But he learns that, no, that's not true, that it is yin and yang, that there's always a little bit of dark in the light, always a little bit of light in the dark, and they are always connected, and that you can't stop it. You have to be ready, though, to defend the people if you are on the side of light. And so I do think that there will never truly be balance, but the hope of the Jedi is to achieve balance. And, you can argue for the High Republic that they achieve balance for 1,000 years, because there are no Sith, but, I think that's what a Jedi would say. Maybe a master like Yoda goes, no, it's been unbalanced because we have to deal with other versions of darkness. We have to deal with the Trade Federation and people. What's the villain in the High Republic novel we read? The Nihil. We have to deal with things like that. And so I don't think there is ever balance, but I think it's the goal of people, and I think this is why George made a timeless story, because everybody's trying to find balance in themselves. They're trying to balance the good and evil. So I don't know if I answered your question. What was your other question too, by the way?
So I got a few more. Oh gosh, I'm writing down another one super quick. Okay, so one of them was Qui-Gon. For story purposes, I completely understand why they axed him, because he needed to die.
Yes.
The greater context of everything, it's great, and I like that. But it also feels like, man, we only get a single movie with Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon, and I love Qui-Gon. Would you have liked to have seen him go on to, let's say, just episode 2 or even episode 3? To have the story slightly altered in some manner.
No, because I do agree with you, and I don't think it's talked about enough. You really do see the ripple effects. And since I had just watched Attack of the Clones, I think you really do see the ripple effects where Anakin starts to blame Obi-Wan a lot. And I think Anakin is frustrated because it's not the master he thought he was getting and that he necessarily wanted. And Obi-Wan is getting an apprentice that he doesn't necessarily want. But they learn to love each other. And I think it causes a lot of ripple effects that people don't talk about as much. It's my brother's favorite character for a reason. I think him getting killed sets into motion everything. And so him living is a bit of a is not him not living is a bit of a bummer, but we do get nice moments with him where he appears with his voice, and I hope it happens in the Obi-Wan show. And whether Qui-Gon finally learns how to become a Force ghost and we physically see him, I'm actually okay with that. That you can still train even in the afterlife. I mean, there's so much about the Force we don't know, and Rebels proved that because there's so much with time and everything. So it would be interesting, at least his voice. Because I think he's been used very well. Also, I have read Master and Apprentice, but I think you'll love that book because you get a lot of, it's all Qui-Gon Obi-Wan before Phantom Menace, and it's a lot of Qui-Gon's obsession with prophecies, why he is the way he is, why he turned down the offer from the council, not once, but he actually did it twice, to be a master. So there's, I recommend that one to you when we get a free break to do free reign reading here. But but yeah, I like it. What's one of your other questions, or do you have anything on that?
I was curious about your thoughts on the whole Shmi Skywalker things, because, real quick, just to, like, preface this, I didn't actually expect that, like, the scene of Shmi letting her son go, and also from the book Queen's Peril, when we see Anakin being toted away on a stretcher from him crashing his pod racer, and she, does the whole like, it's okay, Mom, I'm fine. And, oh my God, I don't know if you felt it as much that much, but like, this was one of the first viewings that I've had where I was like, oh my God, I'm dying with like Shmi having to like let go of Anakin. Like, you really get the sense of how much, well, I mean, obviously it's mother son, like how much Anakin means to Shmi, but she also has that understanding of he can't live here. He needs to go out and do something else. There's so much potential in him, and I love him so much that I need to let him go from this place. And like, my God, the strength that it takes for a character to do that. And I was curious if I mean, like, if that's something that really affected you at all, that's something that you like really thought about even more, or if it's just something that just kind of like, yeah.
It's something that's always affected me. I've actually really liked those moments even as a kid. She does not show a lot of range as an actress, and she doesn't get the best lines by George, but George is not known for writing a great script. He's great writing stories, but not necessarily a script. But I've always liked those moments. We make fun of the moment actually, because it deserves it. But the moment that Qui-Gon tells Annie he's freed, he says it very kind of funny. He goes, you're no longer a slave. Like he's like, hey Annie, you're no longer a slave. Like he kind of says it all funky. But the scene after where he runs away and he suddenly goes, wait a minute, did my mom get freed? And he explains, I tried to free your mom, but Watto would not take that deal because it's just two slaves are too valuable in this system or whatever. Right. And she looks at him lovingly. I mean, those moments I do like, to the point where even in Attack of the Clones where she dies, it is a little convenient that he gets there right before she croaks. But I like those moments. I really do. I think they are heartfelt. I do think the book helped quite a bit. Because you even get the conversations with Shmi and Padme in that, where she, Padme kind of is like, Anakin should be in bed or whatever, and it is a little creepy, but Shmi kind of talks to her, and you get nice moments, and I like the character, and I think she is a very troubled character who ended up getting a break. I mean, she did get kidnapped and tortured to death, but she did get a break where she was freed, fell in love, and I like those moments in A Phantom Menace. I do think they hit emotionally.
Now that does bring up, I mean, why? I don't know. It just also feels at odds with Qui-Gon's character of like, why didn't you just take her?
No, they say it earlier. Remember, he says that they have like a chip that they'll blow up. They say it at the first dinner table. When Anakin goes boom at the first dinner table, after the sandstorm, they explain that slaves can't just escape because they all have a thing that would blow them up.
Got it. No,
inside.
that makes sense.
That has to be deactivated. Although, why can't Qui-Gon just use the Force to deactivate it? But the Jedi are also not soldiers. Their jobs are not to go around and free every single person. As much as people like to believe that.
I mean, yeah, that's it. It also turns into a weird political situation of, I mean, if the Jedi were to come in and free so many people, that it would most likely end up causing a galactic incident between the Hutts and the Republic. Right.
Yeah, they turn into soldiers, and they don't want the Hutts, a huge gang organization, coming after them. They've got enough to deal with. But
yeah, that's why I am actually pretty happy that Queen's Shadow touches on a little bit of like, man, I'm like trying to look around for Shmi Skywalker. I can't seem to find her. I was a little annoyed that they're like, we can't find Watto, and it's like, seriously? He's still at the same like junkyard shop.
Yeah.
It's in episode 2. They just like land on the planet. walk into Mos Eisley a little ways, and it's like Watto's just sitting there, doing his thing, looking a little rough
Now,
around the edges.
I don't think they're in Mos Eisley. I always thought Anakin was not in, because in Attack of the Clones he says that Shmi has been, whoever bought him is on the other end of Mos Eisley. Is Mos Eisley just that big? Or the way he worded it always made it... I've always thought it was they were in a separate city, and that Mos Eisley was on the another part of the planet.
I'm
because they do
sure
have to travel pretty
Eisley.
far to go get them. You might be right, and it just might be that big, but like, I don't know. I've just always viewed it as a separate city on Tatooine.
Nope. I'm okay. So what city on Tatooine is Anakin from? No, it's Mos Espa. I'm wrong.
So it's not Mos Eisley.
Yes. The home of Anakin Skywalker, later to become Darth Vader, is on the cusp of disappearing under a sea of dunes. Mos Espa was a spaceport on the planet Tatooine, an inhospitable desert climate where many were poor and involved in criminal activity.
So that's a different name. So they aren't on Mos Eisley.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's that's the way I viewed it. But
interesting.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions? We probably should wrap this show up.
One last one, and this is a talking point that I know I've talked about a little bit with Light of the Jedi and so on. But I think that you see this episode. It's a little bit of an undertow of a current, and I think a lot of it actually kind of comes through with Mace Windu. That the Jedi Council, we see that it's got some problems at this point in time. Like,
yeah.
Man, I think it's a... Oh, you're all good. It's a huge problem that I mean, like, he brings in this boy that has got, like, crazy levels of, like, force power, and all of them can tell it. And they're like, no, it's not going to happen. We do see the Jedi being way too rigid, I feel. Like, he is too old. We cannot train him. It will not happen. I mean... It just feels as though that very lightly we see the Jedi Council themselves are fearful and way too rigid in their system. Palpatine's critique that he has, like, the Jedi are way too dogmatic. Initially, I disagreed with that a lot when I first saw like that criticism that he leveled there. But man, the more and more I've really kind of like thought about what the Jedi Council and what they represent in this one, I do think that there is actually way more fear and way too much dogmatic nature to them. And that almost by the time, again, this is EU, by the time that Luke actually goes through and creates his own Jedi Academy, that's really what the Jedi are supposed to be doing. You can still love, but you just can't have, like, form too much of a connection. Whereas, like, the old Jedi, it's like, nope, can't love, you can't fornicate, you can't do, form any sort of attachments. Nope, it's all bad. It's all not good. You're too old. You can't do it. We have to make our child soldiers from the age of 5 years old.
Yeah. And I think... Go ahead, finish your...
Oh, no, I was going to hand it off to you.
I think I do agree they are strict with their rules, but I think people... I mean, the top three at the council at that time, Yoda, Mace Windu, and Coyote-Mundi. And there's a reason they talk the most, because they're the most powerful. I have always low-key loved Coyote-Mundi. I've loved him. I love his big head. I love it all. I think... they are harsh, but I do think Yoda, for sure, senses that... I know he says the future is clouded, but I think that is the negative sign. Because I think when they look at the future with a lot of these young kids, they go, okay, we can see most of this. We can see where they're headed, but we can't really see where Anakin's heading. I don't think it's not that they can't see any of the future. I bet you he can see the events of Attack of the Clones and things like that, and he probably sees small moments of pain and suffering, and he goes, this is just... I get that this boy, Qui-Gon, thinks might be the child of prophecy, but he's already too old to begin the training. He's very powerful. I mean, he dominates that test. I mean, he gets it. Cup speeder. He knows what's up. And I think they just say, man, he is that powerful, and it might be a mistake to let him go, to let him train. I mean, honestly, it's very similar to Luke looking in Ben's mind and saying, man, this kid's powerful, and he's got a dark future and some dark things coming. Maybe I made a mistake. Like it's kind of in the hubris of the Jedi. They kind of do that. So for Qui-Gon to be like, all right, fine, but I'm allowed to take on a Padawan learner at some point, and if he's too old to start basic training, then I'll just do that with him, and he'll be my Padawan now. I think is Qui-Gon bending the rules, and I think they all groan because they know they can't stop that. And then that conversation with Yoda where he says, look, you shouldn't train him, and he goes, I have to. I gave my master my word, and I think Yoda at that moment goes, look, if Qui-Gon's dying breath is for his apprentice to train this boy instead of giving him kind words or anything like that, then this is something Qui-Gon truly believed in. And there's a lot of respect for Qui-Gon on the council. And so I think they just, even though they didn't like his defiance, I think they just said, look, we have no choice in this matter. So let's see how this plays out. And hopefully they're right. He is the child of prophecy, and he will bring balance to the Force. And he does. He just ends up killing a lot of people to get there. But yeah, I'm all right with the way that turns out. I don't know if I answered your question.
Kinda, but yeah.
What part did I miss?
No. It's, I mean, like, I guess just overall of like, do you think that the Jedi at this point in time are too dogmatic, that
A little.
that they're too rigid? Sometimes I just feel as though that it can be exemplified with the character of Mace Windu. And I love Mace Windu and I love Samuel L. Jackson's, but for some reason he's always had a thorn in it. Like, I genuinely believe this, that the Council's constant like aversion to Anakin is one of the big reasons that he does actually turn from the Jedi. Also, not to mention the dogmatic and just asinine rules that they have developed over all of these years has also led to him turning and leads to the downfall of the Jedi.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you on those points. I think they are a little, and I think that they have to be a little dogmatic because they need to for the story, because they need to fall.
Yeah.
They're at the height of the High Republic.
I love it. It's just, I mean, maybe some of my frustrations maybe might be coming out in this a little bit of like, there are a couple people that I've like talked to where they're like, no, the Jedi were perfect. They're like the perfect good guys, and like what happened to them was a tragedy and they were doing nothing wrong. It's like, I disagree with that. Like, that there are a lot of problems with them, and there are a lot of wrong decisions. And also, not to mention, I mean, I think Yoda realizes that as well. Of like,
yes, I think that's why Yoda's the best, because he
Right.
checks his mistakes. And I think that it harkens all the way back to his conversation with Luke, where he says you need to think about where you are, what you are doing, because that's where you learn from your mistakes, and that failure is an incredible teacher. And I think that's why Yoda is the best, and that's why he's so well regarded.
There's a whole article that I'm
anybody
actually, I guess my final thoughts here, just to kind of wrap things up.
Because we do need.
Yeah, we do. There's a whole article that I want to bring up once we get to the end of the prequels. Of someone made a big blog post that was like blasted everywhere. Of like, George Lucas was so close to creating the perfect trilogy in this. If there was just like some tweaks here and there, and maybe some themes that he had maybe leaned into a little bit more, it would be chef's kiss. And
I've never seen that. I would like to go through it.
Yes, I would love to bring that up with that, because it the way that they bring it up and some of the tweaks that they bring up in it, it's like, man, so close, so dang close. And
yeah, I'm
very excited to see what your thoughts on that one. But final thought of it, I had a really great time with this movie, surprisingly better time. And man, even though there are some real just some cringe moments in these prequels. I gotta say, I'm thinking this is going to happen. My thoughts of the entire prequel trilogy is that we are going to see Lucas having a much better through line than the sequels ever did.
Yeah. And the sequels were close too. I think the sequels were closer than people think, but I think they took away the problem is, and I'll say this just real quick. The problem is George built a bad foundation, but a nice top, because those movies get better. I mean, maybe Attack of the Clones not necessarily better, but in terms of the story movement, I think it's pretty fluid through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's not executed great. The problem with the sequels is they have it upside down. They started really good, then struggled, and then really crapped the bed. And that is the problem that they had, because their ending was so poor. Where in Revenge of the Sith is the best prequel by far. So anyway, I agree. I really like Phantom Menace. It's got the nostalgia for me. Glad we started the recap. These are going to be fun to do. If you're a big nerd on Star Wars, you got to make sure you check these out. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to our patrons. Go get some Movie Meals merch.
Super
Last
quick.
thing.
The ranking of this movie, since this is obviously the first one we've watched, rank number 1.
Rank number 1 at the moment. We'll put it when we watch Attack of the Clones. We will place that where it belongs. And we'll go through these rankings as we go. So thank you guys for another happy landing. We are out of here. And man, was this a wizard episode.
So Wizard Annie,